Welcome to Who's Behind the Desk. I'm with Greg Kempe, which I'm very excited about. Thank you for doing this, Greg.
Sure, thank you.
So when you started at CTO and I saw that the emails like Laws.Africa, I thought that was very cute and tell me more. So why don't you start, I think, by tell me about Laws.Africa. What do you do? What is it about? How did it start?
Sure. So Laws.Africa, we're a non-profit organization. We've been around for about 6 years now, and we work to publish, to improve public access to legal information across Africa.
Okay.
So in most African countries, actually including South Africa, either you really can't find what the law says, or you have to pay to find what the law says.
Sure.
So we work with governments, but also sometimes outside of government, to just digitize legal information, put it online, make sure it's accessible, make sure it's usable. And now with the world of AI and generative AI and LLMs, we're also making sure it's reusable, right? So I've got a computer science background, and I spent 6 years at Amazon building EC2 and cloud stuff. And so I know the power of building blocks, of laying a foundation and saying, let other people innovate on top of that. And so we don't just put a PDF online, for example, right? A PDF is where useful information goes to die. So we take this legal information, we turn it into structured data, we put it online so people can build on it, but also just so that the layperson can find it and read it.
Okay, so hang on a second. So it's a non-profit, first of all. It's not a startup. It's a non-profit.
Yeah.
And so I want to get into that in a second. But before we do, okay, so Africa is obviously a continent. It's not a country. Despite what you might see, it's not a country. So on the continent, you obviously have a legacy of what? European law, English law, all of that sort of stuff. But each country has its own archiving model, its own way of... So how on earth do you... Yeah. So how many countries right now?
So we have a presence in about 20 countries.
Wow.
Sort of some more, some less. But absolutely, each country has its own what we call legal tradition.
Yeah.
And my life would be much easier if I focused on one country and we could do one legal tradition. And most of our sort of peers and colleagues is a network of people who do similar work around the world. They will focus on Canada or, Australia.
Similar project or similar mandate.
Similar
okay.
idea, exactly. Different operating model, but similar. But yeah, we do it across Africa.
So, okay, so where did you start? Which country, which African country did you start this in?
I mean, so if we rewind to where we started, I mean, we started about 6 years ago.
Yeah.
I've got a co-founder, Maria. She's my work wife. She's awesome. And she's the lawyer.
And where's she based?
She's currently based in Madrid, but
right.
She used to be based here in Cape Town.
Got it.
But she's actually Bulgarian. Yeah. So, but she's been doing this work her whole career. She was instrumental in helping to start SAFLI here in South Africa, the South African Legal Information Institute. So a lot of these organizations are called LII, L-I-I, Legal Information Institute. Starts with the original one, the Legal Information Institute from Cornell University in the US. So when we joined forces, Maria and I, and decided let's start this nonprofit, this crazy idea. Late 2018, we started early 2019. She already had, through her work with UCT, she already had a presence in 15 or so countries.
Okay.
So over time now, Laws.Africa has really taken over that work of the technical aspect of building the technology, running it, building capacity with governments, because we offer a whole suite of services to government, right? It's not just software, it's skills, it's expertise, it's training, it's on legislation management as well as digitization of court records, bringing those together.
Useful.
So there's this whole ecosystem and package that we put together and work with government on. We actually launched with a handful of countries already. And oddly enough, it didn't include South Africa in the beginning, right? The bulk of our focus was for many years outside of South Africa. And in the last 3 or 4 years, we've started doing a bit more in South Africa, and we've got a new offering here. But to go back to your previous question in sort of legal tradition, we currently focus on Anglophone countries. So but we're starting to move into Francophone as well, which is its own thing.
Yeah.
Because Anglophone, the sort of the ex British colonies, they have a common law tradition,
Okay.
which means your legislation and your court judgments effectively have equal balance. Whereas the Francophone countries and the Lusophone, the Portuguese as well, they have civil law, which means that the court judgments have different weight to the legislation.
Right.
But in the Anglophone countries, we're lucky because that common law tradition, they all follow a pretty standard pattern. You publish your laws in a government gazette, that's the official record. Court judgments work in a certain way. They're published by the court and they become law, and you put them online. So we can take our program and our software and really replicate that fairly easily between country, given that
Modifying between the two.
exactly they're always
Yeah.
slightly right. I mean, every country is slightly different to some extent.
So, okay, so you've got talk to me about the user. Who's the user of this?
So, I mean, it's easy to say it's everyone, but it's. I mean, let's start with there's the professional users, right?
Okay.
So, if you're a judge or a judicial officer or a lawyer or someone who works day to day with the law, you need access to this information.
Okay.
And I come from a software world where I can Google, and it's every single piece of documentation I need for any software I could ever dream to, like, hope to develop is online, right?
Yeah, sure.
So when I came into this field, I was like, wait, lawyers don't have this information? They don't. It's crazy.
It's all paperwork, basically.
I mean, if they're lucky. Like, there's some cases,
Wow.
like there's some countries where you just can't get it. Like,
Yeah.
you land up calling a friend going, I know a law was passed a year ago, roughly around this. Like, do you have it? Like, that dissemination is really poor. And so it becomes a scarce resource, and then there's a whole market economy around it. But that's another discussion.
Side issue, okay.
So in terms of the user, so we start off with those professionals, right? So now they can access this legal information so they can do their jobs for free. So it's a lot more cost effective. It saves the state resources. It's more efficient. Everyone's on a sort of a level playing field in terms of knowing what does the law
Everybody
say.
has the same access.
Yeah. But then there's actually a lot more people who are interested in this and who need it. So students studying the law. We've had multiple people come up to us and say, thank you for what you do because it got me my degree, which is awesome. Very gratifying. But also the layperson, right? You're at home and your neighbor, the dogs are barking the whole day, or your neighbor starts selling, like they start a shebeen, or right, they're doing something dodgy, or you want to start a hair salon. A whole bunch of those things bump up against the law. And if you don't know what the law says, you can't abide by it. You can't go to your neighbor and say, listen, you're not allowed to do X, Y, Z because the law says so, as opposed to saying it's just my opinion.
That's amazing. So
Right.
you can then, as a layperson, go in and search. It's basically a searchable directory of any applicable yeah.
Exactly. And it's freely accessible. Like we subscribe to something called the Free Access to Law movement. And this is based on the foundation, and this is partly why we're a nonprofit, of saying this information is fundamental. It's fundamental to a democracy, even to other government systems, right? Law like this, it underlies a functioning state. It underlies functioning communities, right?
Of course.
That's what I mean by like when your neighbor is doing something funky, or you're annoyed, or they're annoyed with you, and they come and complain, you can go to the law. Like that's it. It creates this level playing field of how we exist in society. And again, when I got into this field, it just blew my mind that we don't know about it, right? You and I, if you're not a lawyer, the only time you encounter the law is generally when something's going wrong.
Exactly.
And we have
when you
no
need to, which is
idea.
never a good thing. Or you sit in a fortunate position through this wonderful thing called Cape Town Office, this co-working community. I get to have a conversation with a professional independent trustee who tells me all about body corporates and the law around that, and now I know. I was like, oh shit, okay, you're going to buy something apartment-wise, it's probably good to know these things. But 95 probably plus percent of people who buy apartments or flats don't know.
No, you don't think
why
about
would
it.
You know?
Yeah.
Until the levy bill comes, then you know.
Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing. So so it's open source. So if you want to build on top of that, that's something that you guys encourage, obviously.
Yeah. So
within reason, I imagine, but
within reason. So from day one, our idea with the nonprofit was we need donor funding, but also we need to find a sustainability angle, right?
Yes.
And This has got more and more important in the last few years. The donor funding, the international donor space internationally has become really difficult. So we're very grateful. We have one awesome funder who's been with us from the start.
Amazing.
But we're still pushing an angle of we
European
need
funder
sustainable.
or local?
Yeah, actually a UK funder,
Okay.
the Indigo Trust. They've
Okay.
been so great.
Okay.
But so we have to push to a more sustainable methodology. So we part of what we do is we license our data for commercial use.
Right.
And then the license fees we get from that go directly back into digitizing information and ensuring public access.
So who would potentially be a license a subscribers like a SaaS model or
Yeah, so
okay,
SaaS model. So it would be
a small legal practice, conveyancing, that sort of stuff, or
we're really lucky in that when we started this business, we had that vague idea, but Gen AI didn't exist. Then Gen AI came along and suddenly everyone's interested in it, right? Because I mean, there's a whole discussion around AI and the law, but so there are lots of people now who are going, hey, wait, I'm a lawyer and I've got a bit of technical expertise and I see a business opportunity here,
Mhm.
right? So you need, if your Gen AI isn't going to hallucinate and just talk absolute junk, it needs to be grounded in solid, sound, digital, structured legal data.
Correct.
That's what we have, right? So we're aiming right now. I mean, broadly, we're saying anyone who wants to integrate this information into an app, into a workflow, into an agent, whatever, you can build on this data because it's really solid, accurate, foundational legal
I mean, 20
information.
African countries worth of legal data. That's a lot.
Even just South Africa or one country is tough. Like, we know how hard it is to make sure your law is up to date. Laws change the whole time,
Yes.
right? So if you want to know what does the Income Tax Act say, if you're going to start from scratch, you're going to go back to the 1950s in South Africa
Wow.
and apply roughly 2 amendments a year for 60, 70 years. It's a lot of work. So
Ain't nobody got time for that.
exactly. So we take care of keeping it up to date so the people using our stuff can focus on their innovation.
I just always assumed, I suppose, like most people would, that the government's website or some government repository would exist somewhere, like Google Scholar does, I guess, or Wikipedia, for lack of a better, but that there would be some repository of this kind of data for preservation purposes, if nothing else.
That's what I thought. And then when you look into it, I mean,
Was a dusty attic somewhere with a lot of green and yellow gazette,
if you're lucky,
white papers and such.
Yeah, like it really depends on the country. I mean, even South Africa, our national archives, they do have generally physical records of a lot of gazettes.
Yes, the one right here.
Yeah, exactly. Even those, they can be hard to find. So UCT had a whole bunch of physical gazettes, and we spent a lot of time scanning those. And then a lot of them, it's actually not just South African, that collection. They were destroyed in that fire a few years ago, right?
Yes.
Gone. A lot of countries do not have a copy of their own laws. So there might be a collection that a private entity holds.
What a thing.
It's crazy.
What
So
a thing.
even in South Africa,
yeah,
the government licenses its own laws back from the commercial world, from Lexis or Juta or Savinet, right? Because those entities are doing the hard work of keeping it up to date, which takes resources.
Is it literally printing it into a hard copy? Is that what you mean?
No, not even. So the way, let's say a law comes out today, that's
Yes.
easy. One gazette, it's a PDF, it can go onto the government website, fine.
Okay.
And then an amendment comes out tomorrow to change it, right? Or it's
Okay.
repealed, or it commences slightly differently. Like,
yes.
then you need that process is called consolidation. So it's like a diff in the programming world. Right?
Okay.
I've got the original text, and then I get a new gazette which says, chapter 3 is added and chapter 4 is amended as follows. That's the diff. You have to apply that diff onto the principal work, as we call it. That is now your updated or consolidated version of the law.
Wow.
And that's the hard work, right? And government doesn't do that. They put out the starting point and the diff, the changes, whenever it changes, but they don't keep an up-to-date consolidated
That's incredible.
version.
And that unique to Africa, or?
No, that has been the traditional way of doing it for hundreds of years. So in the last sort of few decades, the countries with resources have been doing a better job of making sure it's up to date and publicly available. But even that's relatively recent. So in the UK, there's legislation Gov UK, which is run by the National Archives, and that is funded to do this. And that is only because one guy, this awesome guy, he's a hero, John Sheridan, he was like, hold on, shouldn't we be doing this? Like, shouldn't we be making sure this data is available and reusable? So he made government work to get it to the point where they do it regularly. And so France has something similar, Lady France.
Sorry, what year was this? This John Chariot, what year was that?
This must have been early 2010s, maybe.
Okay, so as recent as that.
Yeah,
sure.
recent. And even then, a lot of European countries don't have this. It's still the exception when it happens. In Africa, when we started, there was one, Kenya. They still sort of were the pioneers in doing this, that they have a government body that is mandated with making sure, A, court judgments are published, but B, the law is kept up to date and published as well.
Great. Okay.
We work with them. So now Tanzania has it, Uganda has it. We're working with Namibia, Ghana. So yeah, we're trying to change this. Our whole point is to go to African governments and go,
we have a solution.
Yeah, we have a solution, but also there's a moral but economic argument to be doing this, right? Like a lot of research shows, the World Bank shows that if the law is more accessible and if courts are more transparent, there's better foreign investment. It supports small business. There are better economic environments. Government is more efficient.
Makes sense.
So there's not just a human rights argument around access to law. It's a fundamental economic argument as well.
Yeah. But what would motivate? I mean, okay. So let me rephrase and ask it this way. So you go into Ghana for the first time. Who's your first port of call? Who do you contact? How do you sort of open the conversation?
It depends on the government. Usually it'll boil down to something like the judiciary to talk about court judgments, and then it'll be something like the Attorney General's office to talk about legislation. So those two sources of information are owned by two different branches of government.
Sure.
And those, by design, don't cooperate well, right? I mean, the judiciary must be independent.
Correct.
So yeah, we have to start with then. You have to build up that relationship. And convince them this is a good thing to do. Okay, great, we agree. Where does the money come from? How do we fund this? How do we make it sustainable? Where do we get the skills? Where do we get the starting data?
And then that would require boots on the ground, surely. Okay. So, and then is it just so that I understand? So it's an ongoing. It's just ongoing, right?
Yeah. So actually, the big upfront cost and the big sort of hurdle to get over initially is getting that first collection online.
Right.
Right. So with the German funder, the GIZ, they've funded a big program that we've been working on for 3 years in Tanzania. And that was putting, scanning a whole archive of historical court judgments and making sure they're available online. But then ongoing, that is about saying to every registrar in the country, every court in the country, saying when a new judgment comes out, upload it onto the platform, capture the key metadata and make sure it's visible, and it goes up within a day or so. So the act of then keeping it up to date, especially because now a lot of these judgments are delivered digitally, is much simpler. Same with the laws. It's that historical stuff that's tough.
And then how do you ensure that that's kept up, that that's done correctly? Because, it's like a CRM, right? It's only as good as the information that's actually put in. So is that a Laws.Africa person or representative that would ensure that that's done? Or do you then just hand it over to said government and say, there you go?
That's a challenge. I mean, ideally, we'd just say to the government, you're good to go, because part of this is capacity building. So we spend, in Tanzania, we've spent 3 years working with the stakeholders in government, and there are a lot of them, to help them make sure they have the skills. But also, government works in a weird way. Someone needs a mandate to do this. Otherwise, they're not going to do it, right? So we work to get someone to make sure there's a mandate. In other countries, we do the work because we don't have that government partnership yet. So like in South Africa, it works a bit differently. In Zambia and in Malawi, it works a bit differently because we don't yet have those relationships with government. Working with government is tough sometimes.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, it's a lot of red tape, a lot of bureaucracy, and it takes time, right? It takes a long time. So is it almost the case then in those countries where you don't have the relationship set up that you almost want to prove the concept before you then present and say, look, this is what,
Completely. Like we've really learned to go into a country and say, we think you need this. They go, okay, maybe, what? If you can go into a country and say, look what we've started, look at the value, right? Like this happened in Uganda. We had a really great program in Uganda with Uli, Ugandali. And then we spoke to government and we said, your team, your staff, your community, your professionals, all use this. let's make it sustainable. Because then they immediately see the value. It's not an academic exercise anymore. They get it,
Yeah.
right? And if you then go to the government and say, listen, funding's running out, this is going to have to be switched off, there's a much stronger argument to say, okay, let's find a way to make sure this stays online.
So chicken and egg stuff. So do you first go to your funders and pitch, or have you already sort of ballparked that money to say, okay, Malawi is our next territory. This is pretty much how much we need to get it started, and then?
So that was really what Maria had done for years before this, right? Is
Okay.
she had done that. She had raised funds. She had found the funders. She had planted those seeds. And over the last few years, we've been sort of tending those seeds where we could.
Good. Okay.
The challenge is that funding space has really, really got narrow, right?
Yeah.
US aid disappeared,
Yep.
differed from the UK, disappeared.
Yep.
The bulk of our funding now is project-based. It's not just unrestricted core funding, which makes it much more difficult. So we still have a shrinking pot of funds we can use to tend those seeds, and we still do that. But we're pushing much harder on saying, I guess, to funders, but also to the international community, but also to governments, going, look at the good arguments for it. And that has been one of the shifts from going, as I said, like, this is not just a human rights thing. Because in that world, you're just speaking to human rights funding. And there's, unfortunately, but it's also important, right? That a lot of that funding goes to other human rights related things like gender-based violence. It's essential that is funded, right?
Of course.
Digitizing court judgments doesn't look very glam, right? And isn't very sexy.
So how do you prove that case study? What would a good case study look like that you might present to a government to say, look?
We're building on that now, and it's tough because you have to draw a link between this act of putting information online and going, look at the money it generated, right? And that link is challenging. So we are working with some researchers to help us do it. It's interesting because the legal world struggles to see that. They strongly articulate this human rights or access to justice, or that sort of argument. But the economic world doesn't really care about sort of that broader thing. They go,
No, it's not a quant thing, right?
Yeah. So we're trying to bring those two worlds together.
Okay.
But there are groups that are doing it. There's some groups in the UK. There's a World Bank as well, which are starting to. Well, they have the evidence. They have the reports. Now we need to turn it into something that sells that argument.
I mean, sometimes it's just a question of time. Hans Rosling, when he built Gapminder, it was the same kind of thing. And until and unless you can, almost like a spider's web on the wall kind of thing, you can draw out the exact links between. So you could see, I think it was his 2000, as a long time ago, his 2007 TED Talk. There were a couple of cases that he picked out the argument for making all of this data available. And you could see countries like India, for example, child mortality rates were dropping as a direct consequence of education, and women, particularly educating women, was spiking. So education in women goes up, and then all of a sudden in a few years time child mortality goes down. But that's a 10-15 year window that you need in order to sort of demonstrate properly.
Yeah.
And that's always difficult in a quant world, which is money, which is, they want to see results and they want to see it now.
Yeah.
Have you come across any sort of like let's say less virtuous, resistance from governments when they don't really want people to get access to this?
No. It's interesting. Like 6 years ago, in the beginning, we had to work harder at convincing governments to do this. These days, it's a lot easier. It's more about how to do it, the resources. The pushback is a bit different, oddly. A lot of judges that we say, okay, we're going to put judgments online, they go, I'm a bit nervous about putting it online because they know, like, their judges are often in Africa under-resourced, right?
Yes.
And they're often writing not in their mother tongues as well. And so they're nervous about the quality, right? What we have seen, and this is anecdotal, I'd love to do some research behind it, is the quality of judgments improves over time when it's visible. A, I think people put more work into it, but B, you now have your peer group you can read. right? You can imagine if you.
I mean, it's extraordinary to me that you've not been able to do that before.
No, I know. Absolutely, it's staggering. Like we have cases, we've heard of cases in parts of Africa where in a rural area, a court will be allowing child marriage because even though it's against the law, because they haven't seen the law or they haven't seen the recent court judgment saying that like outlawing
that is the law.
So like there's major miscarriages of justice happening just because there's not visibility. It's as simple as that. It's not like poor interpretation.
Nothing nefarious
It's just because they don't see it.
And they're operating under the law as they understand it to be.
Understand it, yeah. Because, I mean, to go back to like the piles of books and stuff, right? the law is very literally hidebound, right? There's still prestige in having a bookshelf behind you of
sure.
all these law report compendiums and
volume 1, 2, 3, yeah.
Exactly. Those are out of date the moment they're on the wall.
Of course they are. Oh, well, yeah. But you could, as a lawyer, I suppose, I know very little about the law, but I mean, you would use that as a reference guide to cite a case study or a case.
You do, but the law changes. So you can be citing there are important cases we have in our own Concord. There are important cases from the last 30 years. So yes, those are not going to change substantially.
Yeah.
But you might need a case from.
But that's Concord.
Exactly. Yeah. But at the lower level, I mean, we've seen citations that this is interesting to me as just a data person. You get court judgments which cite other judgments from a week ago. Now, like I see this in Tanzania, because judgments go up so quickly and because this is such a well-used resource in Tanzania. Tanzanians are mad about it. It's awesome. They pick up features quickly. They're great to work with. And they'll cite something from a week ago. That is not possible.
It wasn't possible before.
Exactly. In a print world, that doesn't happen. So I think the pace at which change happens, in which education and collaboration between peers happens, is so much faster.
That's incredible. That must make you feel. I mean, okay. So, what I really wanted, and most people do, start a business or enter into this like startup world, which is not as advertised, right? Doesn't look like it did on Instagram, right? Because they want to make money, because they want to exit and they want to make some money or leave some legacy. So I'm curious to know. You told me about Maria, but how did you guys? What's the founding story?
The origin story. I studied. I mean, I'll rewind actually a little bit. I did a master's degree in computer science in Canada. I did my undergrad at Wits in Joburg, went to Canada. I loved it. Came back to South Africa, got a job here with Amazon down here in Cape Town.
AWS, right?
Exactly, yeah. I was like employee 12 or 13 or something. So what an opportunity.
Wembley Square.
Before Wembley Square.
This wow, that's vintage.
No, vintage. Building EC2. I spent 6 years at Amazon, 2 weeks shy of 6 years building EC2 at Amazon, learned a huge amount, very interesting. I was burnt out. I needed to take a break. I literally, for a few months, I couldn't sit down at a laptop. It was hectic. But one day I was walking along the Sea Point Promenade, and there was a sign up saying, you can now cycle along the promenade or something. And the thought came to me of going, I wonder how they do that. How formally do they allow this? And I started looking at municipal bylaws. I don't know why. Caught my eye. I mean, who gets interested in municipal bylaws?
Burnout is an interesting thing.
Completely. So I started looking at that and going, surely we can do a better job, you know? I was then sort of entering a nice sort of creative phase. So I was like doing an entrepreneurship course, which is really interesting. So I was looking around for ideas. So I built some tech and it sort of hovered around, and that's where I met Maria. But then I got into what's called the civic tech world, the civic technology world, which is that's really around was helping government to understand how to use technology, right? Just going, we can digitize processes.
That's so useful.
Yeah, completely. Very important. And during that project, that was a nonprofit as well. I really started to understand the funding space, how nonprofits work. And 4 years into that, I was at a conference, got an idea for the business model for Laws.Africa, because even though it's a nonprofit, you need a business model.
Of course you do,
right?
Yeah.
You're paying people, you have to have income and or donations or revenue or whatever it is. I'd then been working with Maria on and off for a few years. I was doing I'd get a glass of wine in the evening, sit down and digitize bylaws. And I decided we need to go a bit more pro. So I said,
I love that
Maria,
visual. That's such a great visual.
it literally happened. It was so fun. So interesting. So yeah, and then through that, we looked at this and I said, we have this platform stack. We've got expertise. A funder was pivoting at that point going, this has been our best investment, the same funder, Indigo, our best investment in Africa, because they funded tech projects in Africa, has been access to law. In terms of the returns and things. So they said, we're pivoting to this, we're focusing on this almost solely. We said to them, will you fund this? They said yes. And I looked at it and I said, when else would I get an opportunity to do something A, I'm really interested in, B, I've got an incredible co-founder and we get on very well, C, there's funding behind it. And I mean, it was just interesting to me. I want to do interesting stuff. I'm not very motivated by money. I'm curious about building things that people use and about unpacking a space and exploring it. And yeah, it's been a journey. It's been
I think most people, that's an incredible story, actually. And I think most, what do you call yourself, an engineer or a developer, or how would you?
Software engineer.
Okay, so I would venture to say I'm not a software engineer, but I would say that I've spent enough time with software engineers to know that the excitement is all about the thing to build and the problem to solve, not about the payday that comes afterwards. So it rings. I mean, yeah, I can absolutely see that, the challenge of it, but also so when you were drinking this wine at night and you know, where did you find copies of those bylaws? Where did you actually get access to it? And was that part of the difficulty that led to this solution?
Totally. So that was Googling online and going, like, the city of Cape Town was pretty reasonable back then. They still are. Back then, they'd put up just the PDFs of the gazetted notices of the bylaws.
I see.
And again, those get out of date. They also get amended. So if you want to see when can I buy alcohol or when can I sell alcohol, that's in a bylaw. If you want to see where can I park on the street and during what hours, how many dogs can I own?
I mean, and that's municipal to municipal,
every
district.
Exactly. I had to learn all of this about how our laws work in South Africa.
Wow.
So yeah, and each one of those changes. So that's at the local government level, and there are various aspects or aspects of law that local government is by constitutional right can manage, and each of those will differ between municipality. So we've got 250 odd municipalities that each have their own liquor trading bylaw, parking bylaw, dog ownership bylaw, beaches bylaw.
And so, okay, fucking hell, that is like, it's huge. And so potentially a never-ending stream of work, a never-ending stream of development going forward, or?
Yeah. I mean, we sometimes have this thought, and we had it in the beginning where people say to us, but what do you do when it's done? And I was like, you know what? We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, because we're not done. Like, digitizing a full national collection of laws is a lot of work. We're still getting there.
I mean, it's within an African context, especially so. So a few years ago, there was a chap here who was doing very important research. He's a bio. I can't remember exactly his title right now, but his passion was studying basically awful diseases, which, you know, shouldn't come with a smile, but this is what excited him. This is what he was doing. And it was particularly looking at, I think it was either Malawi or Mali. I think it was Malawi, where they'd managed to find, and this was purely based on this doctor, this scientist that was based in Malawi at the time, and was so good at preserving all the samples and blood tests that he'd been collecting over decades, that they were able to go in and then digitize all of this. And what they'd found is that there were strings of the population in this area that were resistant to certain types of cancer. And this led to research that they could then discover, well, why, or, you know, and sort of do that. But without that doctor, in a very rural kind of, like, one would, from a Western or Europeanized kind of context, would say it was very basic, right? But so useful and a gold mine of data.
Yeah.
And he was busy working through that data set, decades and decades, and patience, and, you know, just the drive and that guy to just, this must be preserved. We must preserve this, you know. You never know what this is going to lead to, is my point.
Absolutely. So, I mean, if let's say we run out of funds or whatever, or for whatever reason we stop operating, at the end of the day, we still have a huge collection of now public, accessible, digitized legal information. Even if it's just a scanned gazette, we have probably 150,000, if not more, scanned gazettes across Africa. It's a terabyte or something of data, which otherwise is not available. So I think that's
It's
a huge
incredible.
win. So if we if we stop now, I'm very proud of what we've achieved. I used to, to go back to you saying like what motivates me. When I was at Amazon, I mean, I loved it, I enjoyed it, but I had this realization that if I wasn't there, there's a whole bunch of other people who would replace me as that cog in that machine,
Sure.
right? And the work I do now, if I don't do it, probably no one else will do it. It's that simple, right? So there's a great deal of satisfaction for me in doing something that is not just making a very rich business owner even richer. Um, there's sacrifices, there's trade-offs, there's balances. I'm not saying I'm an amazing person in terms of like self-sacrifice and stuff. I still take home a salary. I'm not doing this for free, but I still get a great deal of satisfaction of going, this is something unique that we're doing that otherwise literally wouldn't happen.
I mean, it's legacy stuff, really, what you're talking about, which I think I think
Yeah.
it's amazing. I was going to broach the subject of AI with you, but in a very light way, because I think
Mm.
that's a topic for a whole other thing. But um, so we spent a little bit of time at a university last year in Germany, the University of Bayreuth, and now friends with a person there who is responsible for the archiving and particularly photography, but is her background, but she is in the digi archiving space. And so AI comes up a lot now, and well, it did even a year ago, but now it's really sort of kicked up a notch in terms of pace. And I suppose from what I'm curious to know is, how do you prevent the interpretation of being becoming an hallucination if you're giving AI access to Laws.Africa, which I'm assuming you can? How do you prevent the hallucinations or the distortions of the content that's digitized? Does that make sense?
So you're saying, how do we make sure it uses this as a reliable source and doesn't just dream something up?
Yeah.
Um, you know, I think it was the guy who started Anthropic. He put out some research showing, what the fields that were most likely to be transformed by AI, and programming was up there, and I think second or third was law. And programming and law are, to me, very similar, purely because they're just based on words, right? Law is argued through prose. Programming is prose. So I think all the work that is being done on these agents and these LLMs and these whatevers to work well with code and not hallucinate code and read code and understand it and manipulate it and hold long contexts of code bases in memory or in its context so it can produce a new output. All of that directly maps to doing the same thing with law.
Okay.
So you can now say, here's a 30-page piece of legislation. Here's 5 documents related, like a submission to court in terms of a case. Analyze those together, reason about them together. They're getting better and better at doing that. The other answer is just, it's all prompting, right? The better prompt you give it, the better context you
True.
give it, the better it gets at these things.
Yep.
If you're not giving it anything, it's going to hallucinate. Even, when they say they don't. If you ask ChatGPT randomly do X, Y, Z, it will hallucinate. If you give it grounding and you say, look at this to answer this question, it will look at it.
Even as good as Claude is, and I'm not going to lie, Claude is, much better than say ChatGPT. Breaking up was hard, but we did it anyway. But even Claude I would give it a reference, timeanddate.com or whatever it is, and I said, "What day is it?" And it would come back and tell me it's and then I was like, "No, it's actually Saturday." Yeah. Oh yes, I see that now. Thanks for pointing that out. So yeah, it's not where it needs to. It's not where it needs to be, but it's getting there.
It's really getting there. The way, I mean, if you go to our websites right now, and there is there's one basic piece of AI functionality directly that the user can see, and that's you get to chat with a document. Like I feel like that was use case one when AI launched. But there's a reason for that, which is we don't want to put an AI online that people go to and ask a legal problem and expect a legal answer.
That was,
right?
Okay.
Because what if it goes wrong? Right?
Exactly.
Who's liable? Like in
Yes.
some countries, you're not allowed to provide legal advice unless you're a qualified lawyer.
Yes.
Right. So we've approached this in terms of how do we use AI. There's a whole bunch there, but one of our principles is AI must be used as a research tool. It must help with research. It must guide research. It must help you do research, reason about results. It must not be treated as like a legal oracle. You mustn't be asking a question and getting a concrete answer.
Right.
So it must be a sidekick, a research assistant, a
help me better
used.
Understand.
Exactly. It
rather
still
than
needs the expert.
Give me the because you would still need to in any court. I mean, I would imagine. A few years ago, I saw a documentary in Nigeria, and Nigeria having quite a sophisticated legal system. I think it was based on the British. They got the legacy. They wear the wigs and the whatever. But they were hearing cases. There was an actual case of witchcraft. And that was fascinating to me because witchcraft is a real thing in Nigeria, from what I could sort of glean from this documentary. And but at the same time, they're using English law or modern law, current law, to sort of base these judgments or hear these cases through. So it's a really interesting thing. If you then add AI on top of that as an interpretation of, or help me better understand, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Especially it's Western biased AI.
Well, but that's
right?
Exactly.
You know, there are still anti-witchcraft laws in Tanzania, Uganda,
Is that right?
Kenya as well. Yeah, they literally, the Anti-Witchcraft Act.
I know that there's some ancient English laws still on statute, still on book, that, every now and again someone would find something dating back to 17, where it's still legal to shoot a witch on a Tuesday, but with a bow and arrow and about from 3 kilometers to your north or west, that kind of shit. It's like, very, yeah.
The I don't know what's in it in detail, but the Namibian Admiralty Act is from 1850 odd something. It's inherited from British law, and they still have it on their books.
What is Admiralty? Yeah, what
Admiralty. It's relating to maritime law.
Okay. Like I mean, I suppose that was the main thing. It's like ships coming on. Yeah. So 20 countries on the continent right now. What's next? What are you guys working on?
So sustainability from a commercial standpoint. So really
tricky nutmeg, that one.
Yeah, but it makes it interesting, keeps it fun. But we actually do work at the moment and have for a few years with the United Nations. So we're expanding our international footprint. We work with the Turks and Caicos Islands. We haven't done a site visit, unfortunately, there yet. I'm keen.
Not yet.
But it's we have African technology built in Africa by Africans, and
so
it's world class. It's cutting edge, and we're taking it international. So now that Maria is based in Europe, she's
Madrid. You said, right?
Yeah, Madrid, exploring opportunities there because they are the same challenges, the same opportunities. Germany does not have the same thing Tanzania has. The Germans that we do the work with, and they come and visit, they go, "What? We don't have this."
Well, funny you should say. So a school friend of mine started a little agency called Hello Dusseldorf. And Heike became a translator first when she first moved to Germany a million years ago now. And eventually went and did her paralegal qualification, I suppose you could call it, on top so that she could become a legal translator, because it wasn't long in the, sort of German living that she realized that there's a massive gap here, which is that every time someone moves to Germany, whether you transfer the company, migrate, whatever, you have to translate absolutely every single legal document that you have, from birth certificates, weddings, deaths, blah, 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 blah. You have to translate everything into German. And so she's made herself a very nice living, thank you very much, just doing that work. So it doesn't surprise me at all to hear that they still, that they haven't really advanced. Also, having spent a little time in Germany last year, it's quite amazing how much they still rely on cash.
Yeah.
Fuck. Like Frankfurt Airport, dude. I'm like handfuls of euro coins, Yeah.
There was this whole thing when cell phones came out, right, where people were saying like Africa leapfrogged. They skipped fixed lines completely and
Because
took up
we
cell
needed
phones.
to. Yeah.
Exactly, because
Yeah.
there was
Yeah.
the drive for it. And I think like mobile money and digital payments have been the same thing, with
Fintech.
M-Pesa and East Africa fintech. And I kind of think this will be similar, where because there's absolutely nothing. So there's this huge demand, like in Tanzania, this did not exist at all before Tansley was there. You couldn't get legal information. So there's no, like, the demand for it is huge. So whatever you bring in, it can be the bare minimum and it's going to get lapped up. And our stuff is way beyond the bare minimum. So, whereas in Europe, there are things that will be there that have sort of plugged the gaps up until now. And so it's harder to get people to shift. So yes, Africa will be ahead on countries on some of those things.
And am I right then in saying that the sort of the real value of Laws.Africa is not in the archiving of the old laws, but actually maintaining and keeping up with the new laws as and when they change?
Yes, but it's also the capacity building we're doing.
Okay.
Right. So that, like, we work with Kenya still. They use our technology. They do everything they do in-house. They have staff to do it. We're getting Tanzania to that point. We want to get each of our countries ideally to that point. So if at the end of the day they go, you know what, we don't like Laws.Africa anymore, goodbye, it doesn't stop. They can go to another, or they can do it themselves, or they can find a technology provider. They can shift their data. We use open data formats. The idea being that it's not dependent on one party, us, or a commercial international publisher.
I get you.
To do this. Like, at the end of the day, I mean, it's so simple to say it, it's trite, but at the end of the day, the law belongs to the people. We have to know what the law says. Like, we had these problems during COVID where these notices would come out saying you can't do X, Y, Z.
Right.
And nobody could find them because they, not in South Africa, actually, they were published well, but in other countries like Uganda, and literally there was a black market for these laws. And so there's so much, because the moment there's information scarcity, if you have information, you have a valuable
It becomes
asset.
a valuable. Okay.
And everyone in Africa has a side gig, right?
Dude.
So
that is so dodgy.
Yeah, completely. So there's an opportunity everywhere.
That's amazing.
But it's good to remind myself every day. Some days are good, some days are bad, and you're nose to the grindstone. You're working away to go, actually, this is really really important stuff.
So beyond you and Maria, talk to me about the team. You're obviously all based remotely, so
yeah, we work entirely remotely, thankfully. So during COVID, not a problem. We have a couple of people here in Cape Town. We've got one or two in Joburg. We have a dev team and a project manager and a few others in Nairobi. We've got someone in Senegal, in Dakar, and we have Maria in Europe as well. So we're fully remote. I love employing Africans. Often people have said, why don't you take this to India? It's cheaper. And come on, this is Africa.
Maybe 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's not so much anymore. Absolutely. The work we do with United Nations is a Romanian dev team.
Yeah, and I don't know if you spotted this, but Estonia, I'm pretty sure it is Estonia. We've just reached, the South African government have just made this exchange visa thing.
Oh, really?
With Estonia, yeah. And a big part of it is tech.
Yeah.
So there's apparently a big scene out there and here. And so inversely, it's like a...
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, Estonia is doing very interesting stuff. When I was in the civic tech world, Estonia was doing interesting stuff and was really someone to look up to. Apparently, I think they had something like a software engineer as a president or something. So he gave
it was, But in terms of Africa, absolutely, man. The talent here is it's
talent.
Huge talent, I think. Not just South Africa, but on the continent,
It's easier for me to hire outside of South Africa than in South Africa, to be honest.
Say what now?
Oh, I can get better skills at lower cost.
I see.
South Africans compete on an international market.
Yeah, but Cape Town's expensive to live in.
No, absolutely. That's why I can't pay anyone. Yeah, I can barely live here anymore.
But yeah, besides, it's an interesting thing. And I think in COVID, or during the sort of COVID year, that argument blew up a lot. If your living expenses are X, the job that you do requires salary of Y. Sometimes what I'm trying to say is, why should you be paid any less than a developer in San Francisco if your skill set is on par with the developer in San Francisco?
Nice work if you can get it as an employer, the market forces, and also my budget's limited. But you know what? We have, I mean, this isn't new either. Like our education in South Africa is not great.
Yeah.
Right? The education system in Kenya is way better. People are more literate. People are more numerate.
True story.
Right?
Even at university level, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I just meant that to say, not about you specifically, but I just meant that to say, because then it became, after COVID, it became a sort of a carrot and a stick,
Yeah.
And there were the Googles and the whoever that started doing this. And, okay, cool. If you want to continue living in, I don't know, Ohio or Utah or wherever it is, instead of coming to San Francisco or wherever the HQ was for whichever tech company, fine. But then we're going to pay you according to the living costs of that place.
Which, yeah,
which is an interesting thing, right?
Yeah,
It's not like
a balance, because if
yeah.
you didn't, it's then the people living in California, they can go, but this person living over there has a way better quality of life. But I can't move there for certain reasons. But why should they get so much, like proportionally so much more free income, right? So it is a balance.
That's a tricky thing.
It's tricky, totally.
So,
like the world is globalized, but still kind of not globalized.
Well, this is my point. And then especially now when people are, applying for remote positions, because obviously, I mean, that's the ideal, is that you can live anywhere, but you could still continue to earn USD or, euro, whatever it is. Yeah, that is a definite requirement in terms of, it comes up, where do you, and then there must be some sort of scale metric behind it that says, oh, well, So you would say Kenyan is by what percentage cheaper talent-wise than South Africa, would you say?
A few years ago, I would have said a lot more than now, actually, because now we've got some really good devs, and I must pay them properly, which is good, which is fair. We thankfully have a bit more budget these days, and we've grown a bit. We have like 30 people now, whereas when we started, we had 2. So I don't know. I'm not gonna name a number.
No, fair enough. It's just out of whether it's 10% cheaper, 20%. It's interesting to see how the South Africans kind of rate in that scale. I've got friends who earn really big, big numbers in this country. They're senior developers and they've been doing it for a very long time. And there's a level of both concern as well as, good for you if you can get it, right? But at the same time, AI is moving in fast, and you do think about this sort of junior and mid devs coming into the market, and where should they be pricing themselves at? Just as a side note,
I do think at the lower end of the market, certainly when I was looking, the people who are really good are always going to be expensive, right? And that's fair. You pay for quality. In my view, having been in the tech world for so long and benefited from good salaries at Amazon, things like that, tech people are overpaid. It's ridiculous. Like, take anyone else who's in their early 20s with a certain, like a professional accountant, they don't get paid what a tech person does.
It's massively disproportionate, I suppose, professional industry to professionals. Yeah. It occurred, to me. If you look at Joburg and Joburg and Cape Town, rather, people in Cape Town get paid less, so, by and large, across all the sort of industries, except for
tech.
Excuse me, except for tech. Whereas,
I think AI is going to change that.
I reckon.
I mean, AI is going to mess with a whole bunch of things.
Are you surprised about where we are with AI? Did you think it would happen as fast?
I did not know. I mean, I'm not in the field. Like, I studied distributed systems, not machine learning.
Sure, but
I think nobody really saw it coming. I was like, come on, it's at least 10 years away before something happens. And then LLMs pitched up. I couldn't believe it. I still can't believe how quickly they're moving. It scares me. Like, fundamentally, it scares me in terms of the future of society, of jobs.
Like in a Black Mirror kind of way?
Yeah, totally. And I don't mean that in like an alarmist way. It's legitimately scary.
Yep.
Just seeing how rapidly it is changing software, where we are at the cutting edge of AI. It is coming for everyone else's jobs as much as it is for ours. That scares me. On the other hand, it's incredibly powerful. I use it every single day and I get more done, and it's great. And we don't vibe code. We still care about what we build. I still fundamentally believe that I can still get more done.
Yeah.
Be it research, programming, marketing, you just get more done.
Yeah.
But it's gonna mess with the global economy.
It concerns me a great deal. That's what concerns me most. And it's sort of when the industrial, I spent a long time in Scotland. I lived there, and where I spent a lot of my time was just outside of Edinburgh. towards the south. And what you would have historically in that region was a little bit of farming, but mostly coal mining. And by the time I lived there, which was in the early 2000s, you're looking at the end of Margaret Thatcher's kind of shutting down of all of those mines, which happened in the mid 1970s towards the late 1970s. So you're a few decades on now. The poverty, however, that had now set in, deep rooted into third generation sort of style, was something that they had no plan B. They had nothing to offer these people who had been generational mine workers when they finally just shut down the mines. And it's a very scary thing when you spend time in areas like that and you sort of see how they've been left behind. And that worries me a great deal. It really does with AI. The second part of that is obviously the economic argument, which is both interesting but also on a social enterprise level kind of necessary that we have. And I think it was a Georgetown University economist that specializes in tax has just tabled a paper proposing that because the learning of these models is by and large generated from human generated content, be it all the books, the music, everything else, there should be a percentage of tax income that has to be harnessed from these AI companies back into the coffers. Good luck to them, because I don't think,
good luck.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's right. I think there has to be, I mean, everyone says, universal basic income, etc. And I think their ideas around how to fix this, I think it's going to be messy because, as I know well, the law moves slowly. Governments move slowly. And this thing does not move slowly. It's getting faster and faster. We're going to have that whole industrial revolution or Thatcher shutting down the mines, which took decades. That is going to happen in years.
Yeah, less than decades. And I suppose even if they introduce this universal basic income tax or some sort of whatever it is, even if they do that, it still doesn't address the question of what am I supposed to do with my life? Because on a psychological level, there's nothing more disempowering, I guess, than not feeling useful in the world. And a job gives you purpose. It gives you something that you feel good about, that you've achieved, you've accomplished. So yeah, I have big questions about AI myself, but my God, I love it and I use it all the time. So yeah, ethics do matter.
They do. I don't know if there are ethics in this industry. But I think, I bake our weekly bread. That was a lockdown skill. So I figure I can hopefully feed myself if this comes to an end. I hope people are starting up on their plumbing and their basic building. All the manual labor is not going to be automated away faster than the white collar work.
I do wonder about this continent, however, and I do wonder whether the progress will be as fast as it might be felt in other countries like, more developed countries or the OECD countries, where a substantial chunk of the income or economic activity is based on tech.
They've got further to fall as well. Yeah.
Which kind of does that. Yeah. Maybe. Maybe.
No idea. But it's coming. I was at a conference recently, at a law conference, and someone asked the audience, how many of you use AI? Maybe 20%. And they were very cautious because they had seen there'd been one or two court judgments written by AI, hallucinated citations. It destroys your career. Bad idea, right? So they're very cautious, and I understand that. But 20%, if you ask the tech world, 99%, right? I'm guessing are using it. Everyone, right? You do. And I'm worried that the late adopters, they're not going to get a chance to adapt. They're just going to fall by the wayside across every industry. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope I am overthinking this. But it depends
on the economic activity, though.
Yeah.
I do. I think that it very much depends on the economic activity. If you're not wrong, I think in understanding that if you can replace three people in your organization, to basically with an AI model or agents that can give you KPIs and graphs and whatever an hour before you need to go to a pitch meeting, you're going to do that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. The legal world is strange. Yeah, I don't know. It's what a time to be alive.
No, it is, and I think the legal world has a lot to hopefully, I mean, I don't know how you even begin to answer the question of legislating AI and how you even begin to quantify, because I mean,
everyone needs to slow down while regulate. I'm like it's a nice idea. It's like the world
it's not
moves
slowing down.
Exactly.
The IPO is coming.
But also, I mean, what you're saying there is, in a sense, a failure, that a failure of a government to protect its people, that they say you need to proactively go and do this thing to protect yourself.
Right, because we can't protect you.
Exactly, because the state can't move fast enough, right? We'll have a commission, and the commission will take 3 years.
Yeah, but then, I mean, honestly, have you seen, I mean, in the United States, right? Have you seen those congressional hearings where they have like Mark Zuckerberg and the guy from Snapchat and whoever else in the room? And you've had these senators who are, you know,
those like, questions are frightening. Totally. It's not just I'm not blaming South Africa. It's government as an institution moves slowly. And in fact, that's a good thing in terms of law. I don't want the law to move
that fast,
really evolve too quickly. Exactly. Yeah. It must have checks and balances. But the law is, I mean, we thought social media was unregulated, right? How much damage has been done to the point where now it's starting vaguely to be regulated. But it's Facebook's already changed elections. Exactly. And we're hardly even trying. AI? I don't think there's
I don't know, but I was encouraged over the weekend. I saw that YouTube has now pulled a huge amount of AI, you know, what they called faceless content. You know, they've pulled it off their platform, which is an interesting move. Yeah, encouraging. It's going back to it's very difficult, I think, for any of these entities to remain as they set out to become, you know, from when they set it.
Their world has changed.
You know, Airbnb and.
What about, I mean, a lot in the creative industries is one thing with generative AI, because that's a very specific problem. I think there's a whole sort of bunch of AI related stuff in other industries which are far less glamorous, both the AI and the industry. It's boring. It automates a whole bunch of important stuff. And I see a lot of creative people going, I hate AI, and I absolutely get it. I kind of agree in the creative world. It's horrible. AI slop is ugh. But in the boring day-to-day stuff, like in every industry, there's going to be stuff where AI really has value. And that also needs to be legislated.
Yeah.
You know, responsibilities. And I had it's really interesting discovery at the start of this year when, you know, AI coding really took off, and suddenly there was this sea change in its capabilities. And I had a new dev, and he really came in strongly with AI and using stuff. And we're chatting on Slack, and I realized he's using AI to chat to me. And I said to him, let's work out some ground rules for how we use generative AI in our team, right? First of all, I hired you as a person. He's worried about his English because English is a second language. And he was like, I didn't want to speak bad English. And I was
hang on. He used AI to chat to you.
Yeah, exactly. He would say to the AI, this is what I want to say, put in nice English, and cut and paste that in. And I said to him, don't do that. I want to know that I'm talking to a human, because A, for the just humanity of it, but B, if this comes across and it doesn't make sense, I don't want to have to think, is it the AI getting it wrong, or is it you getting it wrong? Because if it's you getting it wrong, I want to come to you and work with you to make sure you understand.
That's amazing.
Because as an employer, as a team leader, as an experienced professional, I want to help my team get better. But if there's a filter of AI sitting in between us, it's really hard to do.
Yeah.
So like we have ground rules now for like where do we use AI? Like if you're going to write up a proposal and hand it to someone, you have to say this is written by AI or not. And if there's something wrong, you're responsible for it being wrong. We'll assume you got it wrong. You're not going to be able to say, oh, well, the AI got it wrong. I mean, we're trying. That's the idea. Because someone else said, I think Simon Willison, he quoted someone and he said, like the definition of AI slop is where it takes more effort to read than it did to generate.
Correct.
And I've definitely been on the receiving end and probably on the sending end as well.
100%.
But I'm really careful about that now. I'm like, I use AI in a certain way, and I'm very conscious of when I'm giving AI stuff to someone to read. I'm like, it's shitty to read.
Well, a lot of organizations are battling with the same question, I think, in fairness, because there's also an element of shame attached to, or sort of awkwardness. You don't want to readily admit that I wrote this thing using, or Claude wrote this thing based on what I asked it to write or whatever. I do some consulting work with a client in the UK, and everything that I produce, I did this with.
Yeah. At least you're being honest.
Oh God, but you have to, because I mean, from my perspective, because I'm always curious to see. I've been doing some really cool shit with Claude of late on SEO. I know nothing about SEO other than the headlines, right? The sort of 140 characters. That's what I know about SEO. And so I've really spent some time, trying to understand it better and giving some real case studies and then testing it. And it actually fucking worked. So I was like, okay. And so using that and then informing, but I ain't going to stand on the knowledge. I'm not going to stand on that myself because I can't back it up.
Yeah.
But I will say, and I feel no shame about it,
Like, take this with a pinch of salt,
A, take it with a pinch of salt, but B, also just don't, if you want more, then go pay a professional. But if you don't have the budget for it, then let's try and figure it out using this tool, and that's the honest answer. It's like most small businesses rely on AI now to help them get to a level in their business or grow their company to a certain level with the budget that they have, frankly, because that's what it comes down to. It's a couple of $100 a month versus having to invest thousands to employ people or experts to do it, who still might not get the result that you really wanted to. So brave new world, man.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Greg, thank you so much for doing this. I really that was fun.
Awesome, thank you. It's great.
So Laws.Africa, I'm going to dump all the descriptions and links and stuff, and as well as your LinkedIn. So if anybody has any questions, either from a legal background or maybe they're trying to understand a little while, or maybe they've got a pesky neighbor's dog that keeps on coming into their garden. And
if you're in South Africa, Google Law Library, lawlibrary.org.za. Otherwise, that's our local product. Laws.Africa is our website. That's just after the .Africa domain came out. I think it's a great
thought
name.
That was very smart, actually.
Yeah, we were thinking, you're trying to think of a cool name, and then Maria was like, "What about Laws.Africa?" Like,
boom.
And then on Laws.Africa, you can find links to either like Uganda, Tanzania, and Namibia.